It raises a question as well. This language, as I said earlier, is kind of in the realm of kind of social democracy, which means can we get rid of the excesses of capitalism, but you don't have to actually challenge who owns stuff and change who owns stuff in order to change who has power. And you're saying this has a positive effect, even though you can see all the negatives of this. Does that same analysis apply to, say, a Bernie Sanders, who essentially has social democratic rhetoric? Same thing. I mean, Sanders doesn't really question how things are owned in the United States. He's not making proposals, like even on his proposals for infrastructure investment. It's still mostly, as far as we can tell, about public partnerships. It's not building out a public sector, which one would think is a more socialistic way to do it. On the other hand, the rhetoric against the billionaire class, does it not have a positive effect in terms of public opinion in the same way the Pope does?
No, because two reasons. One, of course, he's working within the confines of the Democratic Party and is himself, sits with the Democratic caucus, has seniority within the caucus, is in essence an unofficial member of the Democratic Party, as Howard Dean has pointed out. He votes with the Democrats 98% of the time. He has been the main obstacle to creating a third party within Vermont. That's the first problem. He's a member of the Democratic establishment. He campaigned for Clinton in '92, again in '96. He campaigned for Obama. So if he was serious about taking on the billionaire class, he would take on the Democratic Party, and he's not. That's the first thing. But the second thing, and here he would diverge from the Pope, is that he refuses to critique or attack empire or the military-industrial complex, which is hollowing the country out, destroying our country from the inside out. He has voted for every military appropriations bill. He has voted slavishly for every pro-Israel bill and resolution that's ever been passed through the Senate. And if we don't confront the disease of empire and an arms industry that is now swallowing, the best estimates are about $1.6 or $1.7 trillion a year. I mean, officially, it's about 54% of the budget, about $600 million, but then they hide all sorts of military expenditures, the Veterans Affairs Administration, the nuclear weapons industry, and research, as well as all sorts of black budgets that go into, military activities that we as citizens are not allowed to see. And the Pope is no friend of empire. I mean, even John Paul II was no friend of empire and Bernie Sanders, in that sense, I think, has one more strike against him than the Pope.
Well, but you could do a whole list of things about the Pope if you want to go into his negative positions. I mean, certainly on social issues.
On misogyny, and of course, but in terms of critiquing power.
But he sits next to President Obama. He doesn't say anything about President Obama's participation in various wars and drone strikes.
No, he doesn't, but he's not an active enabler of empire, and Bernie Sanders is.
Because Bernie Sanders voted he voted against the Iraq War. You can give him that.
Well, he had, that's about it. Because after that, there wasn't a military appropriations bill he didn't sign on for.
But the Vatican, and I can't say this Pope has been out. He hasn't perhaps had a war where he's had to take that kind of position on. Although on the previous Iraq War, I think the Vatican was against the invasion of Iraq and has taken some decent positions on some of these things. But then so did Sanders. But if you don't really come out and critique empire, I have not heard this Pope critique empire. He critiques inequality.
No, he hasn't.
I'm saying that you wind up with the Pope of having a certain propaganda value, say, on climate change. Well, why doesn't Sanders? Sanders is not going to win.
Right.
We know that. So it winds up being as the words, as the rhetoric, as the arguments that people are hearing. Does it have some positive effect on public opinion, given everything you've said about it?
No, because he's appealing to widespread sentiments in the same way that Obama did in 2008. But he has promised that he will campaign on behalf of whoever the nominee is, and the system's rigged and fixed. And if it's not Hillary Clinton, will be another anointed member of the Democratic establishment. And Sanders will play the role that Van Jones played in the last election, which is, we can't have whoever the Republican nominee is. You know, she may not be perfect. Don't be a purist. And he will funnel this energy back into a dead political system, and we're right back where we are. You cannot call yourself a socialist and unless you're an anti-militarist and an anti-imperialist, and he's neither.